Thom Hartmann here on the news. You need to know this. Congressman Dennis Kucinich is fighting hard to end the war in Libya. And it looks like a decade of war may be taking a toll on a bunch of other lawmakers. Yesterday, the Republican leadership frantically pulled a vote on the resolution introduced by Kucinich, forcing President Obama to end military operations in Libya within 15 days. The resolution cites the War Powers Act that requires the president to end any military operations after 60 days that have not been approved by Congress. This is, after all, the law. The president is about 2 weeks past that deadline in Libya. With usual bipartisan support for the resolution in the House, or unusual bipartisan support, actually, Speaker John Boehner, fearing the measure would pass, canceled a vote on it at the last minute. The House will likely vote on the resolution tomorrow after Boehner has time to talk to his defense contractor buddies on ways to fix the measure. At the end of last week, in another strikingly bipartisan move, the House came just 11 votes short of requiring an accelerated withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan. These wars are bankrupting our nation, and it's time our lawmakers need to muster up the courage to declare victory and go home. More unfortunate news on how irresponsible budget cuts kill people. A man drowned yesterday as firefighters and first responders just watched from shore. The firefighters couldn't help the man because they didn't have training or cold water gear, thanks to budget cutbacks in 2009. Earlier this year, deadly fires were sparked in Chicago and New York, with first responders showing up late because of budget cuts. So as our nation is learning these painful lessons, guess what Republicans in the House of Representatives are doing? Cutting funding for first responders. The House Appropriations Committee stripped $1 billion in funding for first responders last month in another heavy-handed attempt to starve the government and lop off its security arms. After all, if you get rid of the police, then you can hand security off to private corporations like Blackwater that can make a huge profit patrolling our streets like they do in Baghdad and they did in New Orleans. In the best of the rest of the news, end the war on drugs. So says a high-profile panel of experts in a report released today by the Global Commission on Drug Policy. Former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, former U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker, and an array of current and former heads of state from nations like Mexico, Brazil, and Greece conclude in the report that the global war on drugs is an utter failure and it's time to look into legalization. The Commission paid particular attention to the U.S. war on drugs, recommending that our nation look for other ways to treat addiction, like through better health care and not life prison sentences. As former Colombian President Cesar Gaviria said, "We hope the U.S. at least starts to think that there are alternatives. We don't see the U.S. evolving in a way that is compatible with our country's long-term interests." The world is getting the message about drugs. It's time for us to get it too. End Nixon's drug war. Treasury Secretary Little Timmy Geithner received an interesting letter recently from Europe's top financial regulator. Michael Barnier, the European Commissioner overseeing finance, penned a letter to Geithner expressing concern about how our nation handles outrageous executive bonuses. The letter read, "I think you'll agree with me that bankers' bonuses is a matter that continues to cause public outrage. Getting the matter right is a key to restoring our citizens' confidence in the financial system and ultimately their confidence in the public authorities regulating the financial institutions." Last year, Wall Street dished out over $20 billion in bonuses, but in Europe, things are done differently. Their lawmakers have leveled heavy restrictions on bankster bonuses for the sole purpose of discouraging risk, preventing banksters from gambling with our money, collecting their golden parachutes, and then leaving the global financial system in ruins. Most lawmakers in Europe run for election on a publicly financed system and don't rely on campaign contributions from banksters like our politicians do. So until that changes, don't expect any new tough restrictions on the vultures on Wall Street who are pecking our nation clean. Everything is bigger in Texas, especially corporate tax dodgers. Thanks to a tax loophole, Amazon and other online retailers are sneaking by without paying taxes in several states, including Texas, where the state comptroller says that Amazon owes nearly $270 million in back taxes. Altogether, the state of Texas loses roughly $600 million a year by not collecting taxes from online retailers. And Republicans in the state legislature did something about it, passing a law to tighten sales tax rules in that state and collect the much-needed revenue for the state government. But leave it to Governor Rick Perry, who cares more about satisfying big business than he does the needs of the citizens of his own state. He vetoed the bill without even giving an explanation as to why. What legislation has Rick Perry not vetoed, though? Well, $15 billion worth of cuts to education, cuts to health care, cuts to social services. So while working families are getting screwed in Texas, corporate CEOs have a friend in the governor's mansion making sure that they don't pay taxes. I guess Rick Perry wants to make sure he can keep buying his secessionist survival manuals on Amazon tax-free. So after busting up unions, cutting off social services, Republicans in Ohio are now trying to kneecap that state's minimum wage laws. Currently, Ohio requires employers to pay their employees $7.40 an hour. But a new law would throw people out of the minimum wage laws if they didn't meet certain requirements. The Ohio Legislative Service Commission has confirmed that the law will lead to lower wages overall for workers. I'm beginning to think that somewhere in a meeting room inside the state capitol building in Ohio, there's a list titled Ways to Screw Over Working People. And one by one, Republicans are moving down that list, checking off each item. They also seem to have lists like this in Wisconsin, New Jersey, Florida, Michigan, Indiana, and a handful of other states with right-wing Reagan-worshiping governors. Who's next on the list? Oh, Paul Ryan's already on top of that. And that's the way it is today, Thursday, June 2nd, 2011. I'm Thom Hartmann on the news.